Hello everyone, welcome to Nomad. So in the last tutorial, we did about dictionary list and we also did an example of how to use them. So in this video, we'll be further diving into the newer topics of Python and that includes JSON responses, dates, iterators and much more. So without wasting any time, let's get on to it and also don't forget to subscribe to Nomad. So we are back to the Google Colab again, where we will be talking about the Python topics in much more detail and as well as we will be coding together. And don't forget to keep your laptops open or keep your notepad open and keep writing along with me the codes and let's get on to it. So the first topic that we will be talking about today is Python FNLs. So what are Python FNLs? So So in Python, there are a lot of conditional statements like if, else, which helps us check for logical conditions in the mathematics. These includes equal to's, not equal to's, less than sign, less than equal to, greater than, or greater than equal. So to, to do if and else comparison in Python, let's say we have two numbers. For example, let's say a equals to 33. Then we have, suppose, let's say b equals maybe 100. Now, in Python, if you want to check, then we'll say if. So, so basically, if and else means so we'll start with if keyword, and we'll first open a bracket. For example, if b is greater than a, then in Python, instead of curly braces that we learned in Java or C++, we'll have to use a colon, which is colon separators to separate various statements and snippets and to distinguish between them. So after that, we'll press enter key. And as you can see, there is a space in Python. So in Python, spaces matter a lot. So with spaces, if you have spaces extra or if you have less number of spaces in particular code snippet, then your program might throw an error. So for example, uh, if you write an if statement, then after colon in the next line, you will have to give a space, which can be noted by a tab space. So if b is greater than a, so we can say print. Sorry. So we'll say print and we'll write b is more. And to run the program, we will say the arrow key. And as you can see, program starts executing. Then then we can see the b is more. So for example, if you want to add another statement, for example, if you want to check if b is not more, then what can we do? So we can write an else condition, which we can say else, and then we'll say print a quotes a is. So here, if we substitute a with 330 and b as 100, so we'll get an output as a is more. So this is how we use if and else in Python. And not to mention that there needs to be a space over here which can be separated by tab. So as you can see, if we remove a backspace and press the tab key, so as you can see, it needs to be in the same line. So which means that this is a part of an if and else, the print statement. If we suppose remove this, then we will see an error called as indentation block, expected indent block, which means that indentation space needs to be there. So we'll say a tab and there you go, a program will run perfectly. So in other programming language, we use curly braces, but in Python, spaces matter a lot. Over here, we can also add more conditions. So if there are two, and suppose the values are equal, for example, let's say this is also 100. So instead of else, if we need to add one more condition of if, so we can write elif and we'll say if b is not greater than a, if b is equals to a, then we'll say print both are equal. And then we run this with arrow key. As you can see, both are equal. So now you understood how you can add multiple else statements, if statements, and so we call this if and else block. So you can have more than one comparison. So for example, you can even check with if B less than A. So we'll say B is less, A is otherwise A is less. And let's say if B is only 10, then we'll compare with when we'll say B is less, we'll print it. So that's if and else in short. And then we can have more than one comparisons. For example, if we can say, uh, let's do it in so let's say we have A is 200 and we can say B equals to 33. Then we can say C equals to, for example, 500. Now we can check for more than one condition, like if A is greater than B or B is less than C. So then we will add an end block and then we'll print. What do we print? At least one condition true. So here it means if A is less than B or B is less than A, if any one of the conditions satisfied, then our print will be expected for this. So then we run it, and there you go. We have at least one condition true, which means that any of the condition is true. So if we say B is 50, then still also the first condition will get satisfied, which is A greater than B. So if you even if you smaller, give it smaller, then also will be B will be greater than. Alright, C is greater than 50, which is, so let's see if we add 5, and there we go. We get no output because none of the condition is satisfied. Neither A is greater than B nor C is greater than B. So we get no output. Whereas if you write 500 or 50, you can get an output. So that's how you do and comparison. So if we check this and so which means if A is greater than B and C is also greater than B, which means C needs to be also greater than B and A needs to be also greater than B. So we'll get the output as at least one condition. So that's how we use the keywords and or in the if and else statement. All right. The next thing we are going to be talking about is loops. So that's our if and else. So what are loops? So Python can be used with more than one to loops, which is for loop and while loop. So, so if you are a beginner, then what are loops? You might wonder. So loops are basically used for doing a repetition task with writing a few lines of code. So it can be, for example, you want to print uh, 10 two times. So to do that, we'll have to say A equals to 10. We can also say B equals to 10. Then we'll have to say print A. Then again, we have to say print B. Now, if you run it, this will definitely get printed two times. Now, what if there are 10 numbers, 100 numbers, or 1000 numbers? You can't have 100 variables in it, right? So for that purpose, we use loops. So let's dive into what are loops. So let's start with our first looping state, which is our for loop. So for loop can be used for iterating over a sequence, and it starts with the keyword for. So for example, if you want to print the number 10 times, like we said, so we'll just have to initialize A equals to 10 once, and then we can say, so to write a for loop, we'll say for keyword, and we'll say I in. So it means that I needs will be iterated over how much? So we'll say I in the range of 10. All right. And then we'll say print A. So it means that I will iterate 10 times in the range and then we'll run it. And there you go. 10 will get printed 10 times. Now you can print 100 times, 1000 times, or even 100,000 times. You can do it as much as you want with the help of only two lines. instead of writing or declaring variable and occupying memory space a lot of times or having the task easier. So now let's dive into our other parts of the for loop. So for example, like we discussed in our previous video, list. So let's say we have list equals to, we have our fruits is apples, and let's say banana, we'll say cherry. Okay, so then after that we'll say if you want to print all the elements in the list, so we'll have to run a loop. So we can say for I in list. It means that I will be iterated over all the elements of the list, and then in the next line we'll say print I, and then we run it. And as you can see, apple, banana, cherry will get printed. So that's how you utilize loops. And you can, in the loops, there are, suppose if you want to interrupt the loop after once or twice. So we can say, we can write the keyword called as break. And then if you run it, and there you go, we have apple printed over here, which means that the loop is breaking after one iteration. The next we are going to be talking about is the while loop. So what are while loops? So in similar way, like for while has the same function, but it has a different syntax. So for example, if you want to print a number till 6 or less than 6, so let's say we'll declare it with suppose I equals to 1. Now to write a while loop, so we'll have to do while. So now while loop will have a exit statement, which is the end statement till which the loop will run. So it can be, so suppose if you want to print all numbers from 1 to 6. Okay. So we'll say I less than 6, which is our exit statement. And then again we do a colon and press enter key. As you can see, the space is automatically given, which is our tab space or our snippet declaring that the line I'm gonna write next to is inside the for loop. We will say print I, which means that I will be printed. And then we'll also have to add the value of I or change the value of I, which means that I will keep on continuing unless 6 exit condition 6 will be done. Right. So if we run this loop, so we'll say from 1 to 5 all numbers is printed because I needs to be less than 6. So this is our end condition. If we do not write this I equals to plus equals to 1, then the loop will run endlessly and we won't be able to stop this loop since neither I will increment nor this uh, exit condition will be reached. So it will be like an infinite loop which will run endlessly. So in similar fashion, we can also use a break statement to denote that the loop will run only once. So that's for and while loop. Alright. So similar way, you can also use for loop, while loop to print list, to do any kind of function. And also we learned how to use if and else. All right. So that's it for today's video. And in the next video, we will be talking about the functions and various kinds of functions and also the iterators. So stay tuned and stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to Tech Nomad. And we'll see you all in next video.